Hello everyone, and you are watching Uz Report World News Broadcasting with me, Davron Jumaev. According to the updated World Economic Outlook published by the International Monetary Fund on Tuesday, Uzbekistan's economy is expected to grow 5% in 2021 and 5.3% in 2022. Inflation by the end of this year is set to comprise 10.3% and 11.2% in 2022, which is slightly higher than the forecast of the country's central bank. The domestic regulator earlier in March said it was expecting inflation to slow to 9–10% by year-end. The current account balance against GDP is to make up 6.4% in 2021 and 5.9% in 2022. Uzbekistan plans to launch the production of $3 billion worth import substituting products by the end of this year and increase exports by $1 billion. Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Investment and Foreign Trade Sardor Umurzakov said at the opening of the Innoprom International Industrial Exhibition in Tashkent. According to Umurzakov, the ongoing production localization program would allow businesses to join more than 2,300 projects and provide them with opportunities to take advantage of incentives such as priority land plots and buildings. Umurzakov added that work was underway to liberalize the foreign trade regime, under which import customs duties and excise taxes on a wide range of products have been significantly reduced or completely abolished, as well as all quantitative restrictions on imports have been lifted. Over the past 4 years, the share of industry in the country's GDP has expanded from 26% to 36%, while the volume of industrial production by 3.3 times. The share of industrial products in exports has also soared from 24% to 33.6%. Uzbekistan's localization program was initiated on March 10, 2020. In February this year, Uzbekistan introduced comparable producers' ban on import of 529 items. The negative trade balance of Uzbekistan reached $6 billion in 2020. One of Uzbekistan's ecologically pure and intact zones, Zamin, is set to be turned into all-season ski resort and a major international tourist destination. It will have to install charging stations for electric vehicles and hybrid cars.
The resort was one of the state assets put into an online auction with the exemption until 2024 from payment of customs duties for imported materials to create renewable energy sources in the zone. According to a presidential decree, hotels, cultural and recreational, shopping and entertainment facilities are to be built on the territory of the zone. The all-season resort Plateau Sufa 2000 and the complex Uriklisoy are also to be erected. By the end of the year, a draft master plan and detailed design are to be developed. The Turkish company Idealist has already set a draft master plan for a free tourist zone there.
Uzbekistan and Qatar are planning to launch direct flights. This decision was reached when the Deputy Prime Minister of the Republic of Uzbekistan, Aziz Abduhakimov, received a delegation of the aviation authorities of the state of Qatar. The head of the Qatar Airways Department, Salam Al-Samari, confirmed the high interest of the Qatari airline in operating flights to Uzbekistan and using the open skies regime at regional airports of the Republic, including to attract tourists from other countries of the Persian Gulf. The sides also agreed on the implementation of new projects in the field of tourism. Uzbekistan's one and only car maker Uzauto Motors has raised the price of several car brands. For instance, Malibu 2 LTZ price shoot up for over $35,000 in dealerships. Earlier, this price for this model was less than $30,000. After coming under criticism, the company linked the rise to its loss of over $52 million in Spark and Nexia sales in 2020, saying that the damage should be compensated through the sale of Equinox, Malibu and Trailblazer at inflated prices. Uzbekistan registered 71 cases of side effects since the start of mass vaccination with AstraZeneca and the Uzbek-Chinese vaccine. The minor side effects are temperature rise above 37.5 degrees, pain in the body, itching at the injection site, mild headache, pain at the injection site, nervousness, weakness and fear. Uzbekistan has vaccinated 49,602 people so far. Mansour Bustani, transport sector specialist of the World Bank Country Office for Uzbekistan, on Wednesday unveiled considerations for the construction of the new automobile tunnel at the Kamchik Pass. In May 2019, the World Bank's Global Infrastructure Fund provided a $350,000 grant for the preparation of the preliminary feasibility study for the construction of the 340-kilometer Tashkent-Andijan highway, the first ever privately financed toll road in Uzbekistan.
The upgrade will be to expressway standards using an appropriate PPP or public-private partnership model. This PPP would be the first in the Uzbekistan road sector, making it a milestone in history and a catalyst for future work coming to the market. I would like to emphasize that it is premature now to discuss toll tariffs, since they will be determined only after the PPP project is tendered and contracted. There are several stages before the tariffs are defined. So far, the pre-feasibility study demonstrated that the project can be further developed. It is an important outcome, as for a complex project of this nature, a pre-feasibility study serves as an input to clarify if and under what conditions private investments could be economically mobilized. In the next stage of the pre-investment study, technical, financial, economic, legal, environmental and social aspects of the project will be assessed and determined. Following this, an international competitive tender will indicate the final tariffs for the specific road sections that will be offered by the participating bidders.
Mansour Bustani added that when it comes to tariffs that were recently announced by the PPP Development Agency, it is too early to reveal any figures. The announced preliminary tariffs are aggregated estimates used in the pre-feasibility study. These tariffs can serve only as benchmarks for similar projects. Therefore, any preliminary tariffs cannot be indicative at this stage of the project preparation.
It is the most common lineage, period.
The highly contagious variant of COVID-19, first discovered in the United Kingdom, has become the most common strain of the virus in the United States. Speaking at a White House briefing, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky said the strain, known as B.1.1.7, which was identified in Britain last fall, seems to be behind a surge in cases among young people.
Hospitals are seeing more and more younger adults, those in their 30s and 40s, admitted with severe disease. Data suggests this is all happening as we are seeing increasing prevalence of SARS-CoV-2 variants, with 52 jurisdictions now reporting cases of variants of concern. Based on our most recent estimates from CDC surveillance, the B.1.1.7 variant is now the most common lineage circulating in the United States.
Another variant, this one first discovered in South Africa, that is thought to be resistant to some COVID-19 vaccines, has also been detected in the U.S. Public health officials have urged Americans to get vaccinated as soon as possible, in part to prevent these new variants from spreading. U.S. President Joe Biden has doubled his goal for shots administered in his first 100 days in office from 100 million to 200 million, and urged states to make all adults eligible for shots by mid-April. Still, daily U.S. cases of novel coronavirus are averaging 63,000 per day over the past 7 days, up slightly from the previous week, with certain hotspots like Michigan setting records. Walensky said testing will continue to be key.
Testing remains an important strategy to rapidly identify and isolate infectious individuals, including those with variants of concern.
Walensky said that the CDC has identified a number of COVID-19 outbreaks tied to youth sports events, and that communities experiencing high case counts should avoid holding such events.
Britain's Vaccine Advisory Committee Wednesday said adults under 30 should be offered an alternative to AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine when possible. That's due to a, quote, vanishingly rare side effect of blood clots in the brain. Chair of Britain's Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization, Wei Shin Lim.
We are not advising a stop to any vaccination for any individual in any age group. We are advising a preference for one vaccine over another vaccine for a particular age group, really out of the utmost caution rather than because we have any serious safety concern.
Officials said the benefits of the shot continue to outweigh its risks for the vast majority after safety concerns spurred over a dozen countries in recent weeks to suspend use of the vaccine following reports linking to a brain blood clotting disorder. Britain has kept using the shot throughout. Now, rising cases caused by more infectious variants are threatening to overwhelm the hospitals of many EU countries, where the pace of vaccination lags far behind Britain and the United States, and forcing France and others to reimpose social and economic lockdowns. The European Medicines Agency said it received reports of 169 cases of the rare brain blood clot by early April, after 34 million doses had been administered, which makes it appear to be extremely rare. In comparison, 4 women out of 10,000 would get a blood clot from taking oral contraception. Amid the news about AstraZeneca, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he did not expect to change the government's plans for relaxing COVID-19 restrictions.
I don't think that anything I have seen leads me to suppose that we will have to change the roadmap or deviate from the roadmap in any way.
Britain's Vaccine Advisory Committee on Wednesday said that people should continue to have a second dose of the AstraZeneca shot if they had already received the first dose.
You can't say it was or wasn't fentanyl?
Yes.
I have nothing further.
The defense on day 8 of the murder trial of former Minneapolis policeman Derek Chauvin turned its focus back to questions about George Floyd's drug use on the day of his deadly arrest, and a dispute emerged over what he said while he was pinned to the ground.
Did you ever hear Mr. Floyd say, "I ate too many drugs"?
No.
Defense attorney Eric Nelson, who has suggested that it was drugs and not Chauvin's knee that caused Floyd's death, showed a shortened video clip to Senior Special Agent James Ryerson, the lead investigator in the case.
I'm going to ask you, sir, to listen to Mr. Floyd's voice. Did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
Did it appear that Mr. Floyd said, "I ate too many drugs"?
Yes, it did.
But later, after prosecutors showed Ryerson the full clip, the expert witness heard something different.
I believe so. I found a pipe. Get out of the car.
Having heard it in context, you're able to tell what Mr. Floyd is saying there?
Yes, I believe Mr. Floyd was saying, "I ain't do no drugs."
So it's a little different than what you were asked about when you only saw a portion of the video, correct?
Yes, sir.
Earlier, the defense tried the same question with LAPD Sergeant Jody Steiger.
Does it sound like he says, "I ate too many drugs"? Listen again. I can't make that out, no.
Steiger, an expert in the use of force by police, faulted Chauvin's actions during the deadly arrest of George Floyd, saying no force should have been used after he was handcuffed and prone.
My opinion was that no force should have been used once he was in that position.
Chauvin's defense hinges on an argument that drug use was a factor in Floyd's death. The prosecution's witnesses said Chauvin disregarded his training when he knelt on Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes.
We invest today so that these jobs will be here in America tomorrow.
U.S. President Joe Biden sharpened arguments for his $2 trillion-plus new spending proposal in a speech on Wednesday, challenging those who oppose his plan and the taxes that would be raised to pay for it, and arguing investing in infrastructure will create jobs.
But it also is a blueprint for infrastructure needed for tomorrow, not just yesterday, tomorrow, for American jobs, for American competitiveness.
Biden faces stiff opposition from Republicans, companies, and even some in his Democratic Party to key elements of the proposal he laid out a week ago, which must be approved by Congress to become a reality. Biden is planning a host of investments over 8 years on roads and bridges, but also expanding broadband internet access, caring for the elderly, boosting domestic manufacturers, and building high-speed rail. As for how to pay for it, the largest share of funding for the proposal would come from a sharp increase in the corporate tax rate to 28%. from the 21% set by President Trump in 2017. Biden's plan also raises taxes on companies' overseas earnings and introduces a new minimum tax on the profits they report to investors.
It's honest, it's fair, it's fiscally responsible, and it pays for what we need and reduces the debt over the long haul.
The president said he was willing to negotiate, but reiterated his pledge not to raise taxes on any American making less than $400,000.
Debate is welcome. Compromise is inevitable. Changes are certain. In the next few weeks, the Vice President and I will be meeting with Republicans and Democrats to hear from everyone. And we'll be listening. We'll be open to good ideas and good faith negotiations. But here's what we won't be open to. We will not be open to doing nothing. Inaction simply is not an option.
On Wednesday, the Treasury Department released details of the tax elements of the proposal, including plans to increase auditing and enforcement that it said would raise about $2.5 trillion over 15 years. At times, Biden sounded downright incredulous, saying it wasn't fair to American taxpayers that so many corporations paid no taxes.
I'm not trying to punish anybody, but damn it, maybe it's because I come from a middle-class neighborhood. I'm sick and tired of ordinary people being fleeced.
The business lobby and Republicans have been withering in their criticisms of the proposal. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the largest U.S. business group, last month called Biden's proposed hike in corporate taxes, quote, dangerously misguided. But Amazon chief executive Jeff Bezos said on Tuesday that he supports hiking the U.S. corporate tax rate as part of an infrastructure overhaul. But the carefully worded statement stopped short of endorsing the full spectrum of Biden's proposals.
China stepped up a show of force around Taiwan on Wednesday, sending more fighter jets into the island's self-defense zone. Taiwan's foreign minister responded by warning it would fight to the end in case of war. The democratic self-governed island, which China claims as its own, has complained of escalating military activity by Beijing in recent months. On Monday, China said an aircraft carrier group was exercising around the island, while the U.S. Navy said it had conducted a, quote, routine transit of the Taiwan Strait on Wednesday. U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price on Wednesday described Washington's commitment to Taiwan as, quote, rock solid.
In support of longstanding U.S. policy, again, as reflected in the Taiwan Relations Act, the United States maintains the capacity to resist any resort to force or other forms of coercion that would jeopardize the security or the social or economic system of the people on Taiwan.
Washington is Taiwan's most important international backer and arms supplier, and it's been pushing Taipei to modernize its military and become a porcupine hard for China to attack. Taiwan's Foreign Minister Joseph Wu said Taiwan was determined to improve its military capabilities and spend more on defense, and would run war simulations later this month. China, which claims its Taiwan activities are aimed at protecting Chinese sovereignty, did not respond to requests for comment on Wu's remarks.
The Biden administration on Wednesday announced it would send at least $235 million in U.S. aid to the Palestinians, restoring funding cut off by former President Donald Trump.
U.S. foreign assistance for the Palestinians serves important U.S. interests and values.
The aid will flow primarily to the United Nations Relief Works Agency, or UNRWA, which provides schools, food, and shelter to Palestinian refugees in the West Bank, Gaza, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. Speaking to Reuters in the Jordanian capital, the head of UNRWA on Wednesday said the funds couldn't come soon enough.
The situation has been absolutely terrible, and there was a feeling of abandonment from the international community.
The package is part of an effort to repair U.S. ties with the Palestinians that all but collapsed during Trump's tenure. The Trump administration blocked nearly all aid after it severed ties with the Palestinian Authority in 2018. That move was widely seen as an attempt to force the Palestinians to negotiate with Israel on terms the Palestinian leadership said would deny them a viable state. Biden's aides have also signaled that they want to reestablish the goal of a negotiated two-state solution as a priority in U.S. policy on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
The United States is committed to advancing prosperity, security, and freedom for both Israelis and Palestinians in tangible ways in the immediate term, which is important in its own right, of course, but also as a means to advance towards a negotiated two-state solution.
But they have moved cautiously so far, and any major steps are likely to wait for the dust to clear after Israel's inconclusive March election, which will be followed by Palestinian elections scheduled in coming months.
Britain has pledged support for people from Hong Kong looking to resettle in the UK to the tune of $59 million. As part of a wider effort to let millions of Hong Kongers into Britain after China imposed new security laws in its former colony. The UK said Thursday the money will mostly go to programs for English language support and housing, and efforts to help those from Hong Kong find jobs. Since January, thousands of Hong Kong residents have been able to apply for special 5-year visas and eventually become UK citizens. With the new offer, Britain plans to launch a dozen welcome hubs around the UK to help with registering for healthcare, schools, and provide advice for setting up businesses there. Britain says it is fulfilling a historic and moral commitment to the people of Hong Kong, and that China's security laws are being used to silence dissent. Ministers say the visa program is a way of honoring their side of the deal to hand Hong Kong back to Beijing in 1997. China has reacted angrily to the UK's efforts and have said that the West's views are clouded by misinformation and imperialism. So far, 27,000 people applied for the visa scheme through March, and the UK expects 300,000 people to apply over the next 5 years.
As the US and Iran hold indirect talks over a possible return to the 2015 nuclear deal, Iranian authorities have revealed that they've produced 55 kilograms of highly enriched uranium, indicating quicker production than a goal set by Parliament. Partly in reaction to former President Donald Trump pulling out of the nuclear accord, Iran's hardline parliament passed a law late last year that required the state to make 120 kilograms, that's 265 pounds, of highly enriched uranium a year. That amounts to 10 kilograms a month. A spokesman from the Atomic Energy Agency said Iran's production rate is already up to 40% faster than that. Enriching to 20% is a big step towards reaching weapons grade. The disclosure comes as Tehran and Washington enter a second day of talks in Vienna, so far described as constructive. In January, Iran began enriching uranium to 20% at Fordow, an underground uranium enrichment site that was built in secret inside a mountain, possibly to withstand any aerial bombardment. It's all part of a recent acceleration of its breaches of the nuclear deal that stipulated Tehran was not allowed to enrich uranium at Fordow at all.
Another day of small moves on Wall Street ahead of the start of earnings season. The Dow rose 16 points on Wednesday. The S&P 500 crept 6 points higher to a fresh record closing high. The Nasdaq was down 9 points. Minutes from the last Federal Reserve meeting provided comfort that the world's most powerful central bank remains in no rush to raise interest rates. Fed officials say it will likely take, quote, some time for substantial further progress on their twin goals of more hiring and stable prices. The minutes were a win-win for investors, says Raymond James Chief Investment Officer Larry Adam.
The Fed's continuation to be in the market and the economy's corner continues to send a very positive tone to the market. You know, the old saying, don't fight the Fed. Well, the Fed says we're not going to be doing anything for the foreseeable future. That should keep this economy's momentum moving higher.
Optimistic words from the head of J.P. Morgan Chase also kept a floor under the market. CEO Jamie Dimon believes the U.S. could be in store for an economic boom that lasts through 2023 if more adults get vaccinated and federal spending continues. He also weighed in on the hot topic of economic inequality. As part of his annual letter to shareholders, the head of America's biggest bank called for raising the federal minimum wage, improving training for jobs at high schools and colleges, and making it easier for people with criminal records to get jobs. Cruise ship operator Carnival lost nearly $2 billion in the first quarter, but bookings during the period surged 90% compared to the prior quarter. CEO Arnold Donald warned it may have to shift home ports to other parts of the world if a U.S. no-sail order isn't lifted. Shares of Carnival touched a 52-week high. In more economic news, the U.S. trade deficit surged to a record high in February as the nation's economic activity rebounded more quickly than trading partners.
Change. You can resist it, be left behind.
General Motors is trying to transform itself and, taking a page from Apple's playbook, make a product, in this case an automobile, and couple it with a range of services that can potentially bring in revenues long after the initial sale. That transformation of the more than century-old company is already happening under the watch of CEO Mary Barra as it looks to tap into a growing auto services segment estimated to be worth more than $1 trillion. According to conversations between Reuters and several GM executives, an internal innovation team is developing new lines of businesses that could come with monthly or quarterly subscription fees that go right to GM's pockets. One such product that's already making headway? BrightDrop, a unit that will provide electric vans and related hardware to commercial delivery firms, starting with FedEx.
OnStar Insurance.
Another idea is to leverage GM's long-running OnStar vehicle communication service to sell other services that can be delivered over the air to vehicles connected to the web. For example, GM executives told Reuters its dealers could offer insurance policies to owners when they buy or lease a vehicle. Barra told Reuters instead of continuing to return the billions of dollars to shareholders in dividends and stock buybacks of recent years, she's going to use that money to invest in electric vehicles and hire the staff to give GM more of a Silicon Valley vibe. But it will have to overcome the many skeptics out there who doubt an old, stodgy automaker can transform itself into an Apple-like juggernaut and become a more formidable tech-forward rival to Tesla. And it's not alone. All the other automakers have watched Tesla zoom to the top spot as the world's most valuable car company and are in the midst of transformations as well, with a heavy focus on rolling out electric vehicles. Investors, however, sense an opportunity for GM to evolve and have pushed the stock up nearly 50% so far this year.
These were the top headlines for today. Stay safe and goodbye.